That's saying quite a bit. Sam Kahn does join us from theathletic.com. Is he on with us?
Yeah, he is.
Sam, that says quite a bit, doesn't it, when LSU, a fan like Garrett, feels like that they're not set up for the NIL era when they are a big blue blood type program?
Yeah, it does. And I think it speaks to the problem of outsourcing payment of athletes, because this is an NIL issue, or it's a booster issue, because you're saying essentially your boosters don't have the money to do it. Now, when we start getting direct payments in the rev share era, I would suspect that LSU would be able to do that, would be able to account for that, just because of they're going to get as much more revenue than any other school out there, except for Texas or Ohio State or a few of those others, because they're part of the SEC in that big broadcast contract. So I think when things shift over, I don't know how much it will change, but I do think it will change a significant amount, especially for those schools that are the blue bloods or the power programs in those big conferences, because they're going to have the money coming in from a media rights standpoint. So I think you'll see some adjustment to that. And I'll be curious to see how this clearinghouse works with the NIL part of it. But to your point, yeah, it's frustrating that we're at a point right now where your ability to land a recruit is partially or heavily dependent on whether or not your boosters can pay for them. That's not where we should be right now.
Do you think that there are untapped reservoirs at LSU? And we'll ask Mike Scarborough later, but do you think this might help them get some of those untapped reservoirs now that you said, hey, we lost this dude to Michigan? Like, this is going to keep happening unless you step up.
Yeah, I don't know the ins and outs of their booster situation, but there's nothing that motivates quite like losing, right? I think back to a program like SMU as an example. I remember when Sonny Dykes was there and they were trying to do certain things from a facility standpoint, and then when he left for the rival school at TCU, all of a sudden the booster enthusiasm went through the roof, and all of a sudden you got this end zone facility built, and then when the NIL era started, you got a lot of money invested in there. And so if you want to win bad enough and you have evidence of here's how we lost in this battle, we need people to step up. I think it absolutely can be a motivator.
Sam, you are the techspert. We've seen a couple of coaches get some new contracts here in the last 24 hours. G.J. Kinney at Texas State, Rhett Lashlee at SMU. Both have obviously earned those, but I do think there's some years where that can be kind of performative, to kind of cut off the pursuit. It seems like this is going to be kind of a quiet offseason in college football as far as head coaching goes, but your thoughts on what those two have done for those programs and them getting rewarded for it here in the last 2 days?
Yeah, Lashlee's a no-brainer. I mean, took him to the conference title last year, has him in position to win another one this year in a new conference. That accomplishment to me is remarkable, and I think is really one of the undersold, underrated storylines of this year. If you would have asked me if SMU was going to be an ACC title contender at the start of the year, I would have told you were crazy, because you guys saw it last year with the schools that went from the American to the Big 12. It is really hard to go from a Group of 5 conference to a Power 5 conference when you're talking about the level of talent that you need to do it. But it's a testament to the roster construction that Rhett Lashlee and his staff have done over time and getting that roster ready for this schedule. And the ACC being a little bit down helps, certainly, but it's still not an easy thing to do, to be sitting here first place in the conference. So well-deserved on his part, and because he would have been a hot commodity for any power conference program that would have had an opening. And G.J. Kinney, I think they're a little bit – they're not as good as we thought they were going to be. I think a lot of us had pegged them as potential Sun Belt champion, potential playoff team if things broke right for them. They're not quite to that, but they are going to a bowl game again, back-to-back years. Obviously, they'd never been to a bowl game before G.J. got there, and I think he's continuing to push that program forward. So no reason to risk losing him to anybody else. I think he's obviously one of the lower-paid coaches, at least when he first got there to Texas State. He got a raise last year from $800,000 to $1 million. I don't know. I haven't seen what this one is, but getting him, making the effort to keep him is good for the future of that program, because this is the first real taste of success that Texas State has had in their 12 years in the FBS.
Yeah, I think he's getting $2 million a year now. 7
really?
years,
Wow.
$14 million.
Good.
Yeah. I'd take it.
Getting close to that Jeff Traylor money.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Hey, speaking of which, how about the UTSA Roadrunners? They make a little bit of a comeback here down the stretch?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think we all saw them and wondered what were they going to be without Frank Harris. And then when they struggled so badly at the start of the season, you're like, well, this is a team that only could win with their one quarterback. And I think you got to give Jeff Traylor and those coaches a lot of credit. They have fought. They've endured a lot of injuries, a lot of setbacks, and they have continued to fight. They've continued to show up every week. And he's got them in position to go back to a bowl game. And I think that'll be a remarkable accomplishment. It's not where they want to be. They certainly would like to be a lot better than that. But I think it's a testament to the job that him and his staff have done just to keep those guys in the mix, because they were absolutely left for dead at the midway point of the season.
Yeah, and his quarterback, good feature I saw written by Mike Craven on Owen McCowan, who's Josh's son, who's given them a lift. Would you say that Lashlee is overlooked when it comes to Cignetti, Sataki, maybe even Dion being in the mix, or Army's head coach when it comes to Coach of the Year?
Maybe not. I don't know. I just think SMU overall has just been undersold, even when we talk about the playoff rankings, because they're several spots behind Miami, even though the resumes are pretty comparable. And I heard you guys say it. I think Craig said it earlier this week. I do wonder if people have forgotten that SMU is in the ACC, national, because it's so new and it's so fresh, and they've just kind of quietly hummed along. They had the BYU loss early, and I think after that early loss, maybe people kind of wrote them off, and they made the quarterback change, and now they've been on fire. They haven't lost since then. But to me, I mean, you could go a number of different ways. I think Cignetti is probably the shoe-in for Coach of the Year, regardless of what happens this next two games. To have Indiana 10-0 is remarkable. But after him, yeah, I think Jeff Monken, Kalani Sitake, Rhett Lashlee, all those guys are deserving to be in consideration. And I go back to Lashlee, it's not just a one-year thing for him. It's not like he took a 5-7 team or he took a team that was really down in the dumps. This is the culmination of a program that he has been building and has done it in the transition to a tougher conference. That to me is because Kalani's turning it around from a 5-7 team the first year in the Big 12, which is terrific. But Rhett has been doing this, won a conference championship, and then does something that very few programs do. Very few programs succeed in their first year in a better, tougher conference. And to do that right away is really impressive.
Sam, A&M and Auburn this week, on paper, A&M should trash Auburn. Auburn's not good. They're not a good team. Vegas sees this as a 2.5-point spread. A&M's not really ever played well in Jordan-Hare. I mean, not many people do, even though Auburn's been really bad this year. How does A&M avoid the trap that has been Auburn, especially looking ahead to next week, which is going to be crazy, and not take themselves out of the college football playoff race before what would be the most important A&M Texas game in history if they're both meeting with a chance to go to the SEC title game?
Yeah, I think you just got to do what you've been doing, which is play really good defense, take care of the football, move the football in the run game. I'll be honest with you, and this is where Vegas, this is why they make money, and this is why I'm sitting here talking about stuff. I don't see it. I don't see why this game spread is so small. I don't understand. I mean, I guess could A&M players be overlooking and looking ahead? Maybe. I don't really buy into that. When I watch Auburn, I just don't see it. I don't see what makes, and I get it, a road game in the SEC is always tough, but as long as Peyton Thorne is the quarterback, I'm just not buying this team. And so I don't see where they could be a big challenge. Now, if A&M comes out and sleepwalks in the first half, sure. Yeah, this could absolutely get messy. But I know they've played tight with Mizzou, and they played, they kept it close. They were ahead against Oklahoma for a while, and Oklahoma ended up coming back, and they beat Kentucky. But I just don't see it. I don't think Auburn's all that great. I think A&M's. I'd be surprised if A&M didn't handle this game.
Sam, kind of a grab bag here. Sort of the highlights of this weekend. You've got Ohio State and Indiana, which obviously there's been a lot of talk about that. There's Notre Dame Army and the implications there. There's also that 2:30 double whammy for the Big 12 where they've got a couple of very important games and BYU, Arizona State, also Kansas, Colorado. I mentioned all that. What stands out to you this weekend? What's kind of top of mind for you as the most interesting, most important sort of storyline, and maybe one I didn't mention?
Yeah, I think the two that you mentioned, the Army, Notre Dame, and the Indiana, Ohio State, because Army, Notre Dame to me is kind of a de facto elimination game. If Army loses and they're out, if Notre Dame loses, I think it's going to be really hard for them to get in. So that one I think is going to be center stage. And then Indiana, Ohio State, just because of the narrative that we've endured the last week, somehow we went from Indiana being a fun story to now everybody, including the SEC commissioner, attacking their resume. And I'll be honest, I'm sick of it. I'm tired of listening to it. Can we not just enjoy it and then let it all play out? I'm fascinated to see what kind of fight they put up against Ohio State tomorrow, especially as it compares to Penn State, because I think they're still behind Penn State in the rankings, which puzzles me because Penn State's resume really ain't that good either. And I'll be curious to see, do they play Ohio State better than Penn State did? The Big 12 one, you guys know I'm going to be watching that one. Of those two, I know everyone's focused on BYU and Arizona State, but I'm fascinated by this Colorado team. And that one to me is almost more intriguing because of how Kansas has played the last few weeks, but also because Colorado is really on the cusp of making this thing happen. And I think it's incredible when you think about where they were last year and where we were coming into this season. When Deion Sanders in January was talking about college football playoff expectations, a lot of us laughed, myself included. I thought it was ridiculous. I was like, why would you set expectations way up here for a team that went 4-8 last year? I thought he was setting them up for failure, but the joke's on me and the joke's on all of us who doubted him, because they did a much better job of stocking that roster. And we talked about this in the offseason. I talked to people across the country and across the conference about what they did in the portal. And I heard a lot of people tell me that they thought, you know what, Colorado did a sneaky good job in the portal of getting guys, not just going to get guys, but getting really good quality players that fit, that filled needs that they had. And it's playing out because some of the drama that we saw last year with the staff and the midseason change on the offense and all that stuff is gone. They've been quiet. It hasn't been boastful. Yep. It hasn't been a lot of look at me. It has been going out there, playing damn good football and winning football games. And I'm really, really impressed by it.
Yeah, we had Brian Howell on, who covers them, from the Daily Camera yesterday. And I asked him about, it seemed like it's been more, it just hasn't been a lot of glitz and glamour and a lot of like Rolexes or whatever. It really has just been about football. And I think that they all kind of huddled together and said, hey, let's go play football. And the defense has been really, really good as well. Sam, great to see you, man. Hope you're doing well. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great weekend watching some great football.
Thank you. Y'all too. Have a good one.
Sam Conn, theathletic.com, with us on Fridays at